That night, standing in my white dress under the lights, I learned something cruel. Sometimes the people who smile at you are the ones waiting for the perfect moment to break you. My name is Isabella. I'm 56 years old now, and this is the story I kept locked inside my heart for 28 years. I've never told it completely, not even to my children. But today, I need to let it go. Because silence, I've learned, can heal you or destroy you. And I chose to let mine heal me. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. June 1997. I was 28 years old, marrying the man I loved more than my own breath. David. Kind, patient, with hands that held mine like I was something precious. We met at a bookstore on a rainy afternoon. I was looking for poetry. He was looking for maps. Maybe we can get lost together, he said. And we did. The wedding was simple but beautiful. White roses everywhere. My mother cried. My father walked me down the aisle with his chin trembling. I remember the weight of my dress, the way the church smelled like candles and hope, the warmth of David's hand when he slipped the ring onto my finger. I thought, this is it. This is my beginning. But there was someone in that room who saw my joy and wanted to ruin it. Her name was Monica, David's younger sister, 32 years old, sharp smile, and a heart I never fully understood. From the moment David introduced us, I felt something cold in her eyes. She hugged me, but her hands were stiff. She called me sister, but the word sounded hollow. Still, I tried. I baked her favorite cookies. I asked about her life. I wanted her to love me the way I already loved her brother. She never did. The reception was held in my parents' backyard. Paper lanterns hung from the trees. There was laughter, music, the sound of glasses clinking. I felt safe, loved, surrounded by people who wanted us to be happy. David's hand never left mine. He whispered in my ear, "You're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Then the speeches began. My father spoke first, then David's best friend, then my maid of honor, who made everyone laugh and cry at the same time. And then Monica stood up. She didn't ask permission. She just walked to the microphone, glass of champagne in her hand, that sharp smile on her lips. "I'd like to say something," she announced. David looked at me. I smiled, unsure. I thought maybe, finally, she would say something kind, something that would make me feel like I belonged in their family. She raised her glass. "A toast," she said, her voice loud and clear, "to my brother David, who married out of pity." The words hung in the air like smoke. For a second, no one moved. Then someone laughed, a nervous, uncomfortable sound. Then another, and another, until half the room was laughing, unsure if it was a joke or not. But I knew. I looked at Monica. Her eyes were on me, cold and satisfied. She took a sip of her champagne, still smiling. David's face turned red. He stood up, his chair scraping the floor. "Monica, what the hell?" But she was already walking away, disappearing into the crowd like nothing had happened. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, my hands folded in my lap, my wedding dress suddenly feeling too tight, too heavy. The laughter faded. People looked away. My mother reached for my hand, but I pulled it back. I didn't want comfort. I wanted to disappear. Sometimes betrayal doesn't come from strangers. It comes from the people you're trying to love. Have you ever been humiliated by someone you thought would protect you? Tell me your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Sometimes just knowing we're not alone makes the weight a little lighter. That night I went home as a married woman. But inside, something had broken. And I knew that Monica's words would follow me forever, unless I did something about it. To understand what Monica took from me that night, you need to understand what I had before she opened her mouth. I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, the kind of place where everyone knows your name and your business. My parents owned a flower shop on Main Street. Every morning, I'd wake up to the smell of fresh-cut roses and my mother's coffee brewing in the kitchen. My father would hum while arranging bouquets, his hands gentle and sure. "Flowers," he used to say, "are proof that God believes in second chances. They bloom, they die, they bloom again." I believed him. I was a quiet girl. I loved books more than parties, poetry more than small talk. I worked at the library after school, shelving returns and helping elderly patrons find large print mysteries. I wasn't popular, but I was content. I had my small circle of friends, my Saturday morning walks, my journal where I wrote down every beautiful thing I noticed, the way light fell through leaves, the sound of rain on the roof, the feeling of a good ending in a sad story. When I met David, I was 26 years old and had convinced myself I might never marry. Not because I didn't want to, but because I'd never met anyone who made me feel like I was enough just as I was. Until him. He came into the library one October afternoon, looking for maps of the Appalachian Trail. He wanted to hike it someday, he said, see the country from the ground up. Most people rush through life, he told me. I want to walk through mine slowly. I fell in love with him right there, between the geography section and the old wooden tables. We dated for a year and a half. Long walks, late-night phone calls, Sunday dinners with my parents. He fit into my life like he'd always been there. He laughed at my terrible jokes. He read my favorite poems out loud, even when he didn't understand them. He held my hand in a way that made me feel safe. His family was different from mine, louder, more complicated. His father had passed away when David was 15, and his mother, Carol, raised him and Monica alone. She was a strong woman, hard-working, but there was a sadness in her eyes that never quite went away. She welcomed me warmly, though. She hugged me the first time we met and said, "David talks about you constantly. I'm so glad he found you." Monica was there that day, too. 24 years old, beautiful in a sharp, polished way. She worked as a secretary at a law firm downtown. She had perfect nails, perfect hair, and a boyfriend named Richard who she'd been dating for 2 years. He was handsome, charming, always smiling. They seemed happy, or at least I thought they did. "So you're the librarian," Monica said when we were introduced. She didn't smile, but she didn't frown either, just looked at me like I was something she was trying to figure out. "I am," I said, trying to sound confident. "David always liked quiet girls," she said. Then she turned and walked away. I didn't think much of it then. I told myself she was just protective of her brother, that she'd warm up to me eventually. But over the months, I started to notice things. Small things. The way she'd interrupt me when I was talking. The way she'd make jokes at my expense, then laugh like it was all harmless fun. The way she'd mention David's ex-girlfriend, a woman named Stephanie, loud and confident and everything I wasn't, and say things like, "Remember how much fun you two had?" right in front of me. David always defended me. "Ignore her," he'd say. "That's just how Monica is. She doesn't mean anything by it." But I knew. Women always know when another woman wants them gone. Still, I pushed it aside. I focused on the good. David proposed to me on a snowy evening in December, on the same bench where we'd had our first kiss. He didn't have a fancy speech prepared. He just held my hands and said, "I want to spend my whole life making you happy. Will you let me?" I said yes before he even finished the question. The months leading up to the wedding were a blur of joy and preparation. Choosing flowers with my mother, picking out a dress that made me feel like a bride in an old movie, writing our vows by candlelight. I felt like I was walking through a dream. Monica barely spoke to me during that time. She showed up to the bridal shower my mother threw, but she sat in the corner, flipping through a magazine. When I opened her gift, a set of plain white towels, she said, "I didn't know what you'd like. You're hard to read." I smiled and thanked her anyway. I wanted so badly for her to like me. I wanted to be part of David's family the way he was part of mine. I thought love could fix anything. I thought patience and kindness would eventually win her over. I was so naive. As I tell you this, I wonder where you're listening from. Write your city below so I feel a little closer to you. Sometimes these memories feel so far away, but knowing you're here with me makes them feel real again. The wedding day arrived. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, sunlight streaming through the lace curtains. My mother came in with tea and toast. "Today," she said, kissing my forehead, "you become someone's whole world." I believed her. But that night, standing at the reception with Monica's words echoing in my ears, I realized something I should have seen coming. Some people don't want you to be happy, and sometimes the cruelest ones are family. That night, David and I went to the small hotel where we'd reserved the honeymoon suite. It had a view of the garden, rose petals scattered on the bed, champagne chilling in a silver bucket. Everything was supposed to be perfect, but I couldn't stop hearing her voice. Married out of pity. David tried to hold me. I let him, but my body felt like stone. He apologized over and over, his voice breaking. She was drunk. She's jealous. She didn't mean it, Isabella. Please don't let her ruin this for us. But it was already ruined. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment again and again. The way Monica's eyes had found mine across the room. The way she'd smiled while saying it. The laughter that followed. The way I just sat there, frozen, like a fool. Why didn't I say something? Why didn't I stand up and walk out? Why did I let her make me small? By morning, something inside me had shifted. I wasn't sad anymore. I was angry. Not the loud, explosive kind of anger. The quiet kind. The kind that sits in your chest and waits. The kind that makes you very, very clear about what you need to do. We came back from our brief honeymoon 2 days later. David wanted to confront Monica immediately, but I stopped him. No, I said. Leave it alone. He looked confused. Isabella, she humiliated you. She humiliated us. I can't just leave it, I repeated. My voice was calm, but my hands were shaking. He didn't understand. How could he? David saw the best in people, even when they showed him their worst. That's what I loved about him. But it's also what made him blind. I, on the other hand, had learned something important that night. Some people only understand consequences. The following Sunday, we went to David's mother's house for dinner. It was a tradition. Every Sunday, the family gathered around Carol's table. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, green beans, apple pie, comfort food that was supposed to make you feel like you belonged. Monica was there. She greeted us at the door with that same sharp smile, like nothing had happened. There's the newlyweds, she said, her voice sickly sweet. How was the honeymoon? I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time I saw something I hadn't noticed before. Fear. It was just a flicker, hidden behind the smile. But it was there. She was waiting to see if I would say something, if I would make a scene, if I would cry or yell or demand an apology. I did none of those things. It was lovely, I said, stepping past her into the house. Thank you for asking. Her smile faltered. Just for a second. Good. Dinner was tense. Carol tried to keep the conversation light, asking about our plans, our new apartment, whether we'd decided on paint colors yet. David answered most of the questions. I stayed quiet, cutting my pot roast into small, precise pieces. Monica kept glancing at me. I could feel her eyes, like she was trying to figure out what I was thinking. At one point, she tried to engage me directly. So, Isabella, she said, her voice casual, have you heard from Richard lately? Richard, her boyfriend, the handsome, charming man she'd been dating for 2 years. The one she brought to every family gathering, the one she talked about constantly, the one she was convinced would propose any day now. No, I said, meeting her eyes. Why would I? She laughed, but it sounded forced. Oh, no reason. I just thought maybe he'd mentioned running into you or something. He hasn't. The truth was, I had seen Richard recently. 3 days before my wedding, actually. I'd been at the grocery store, picking up last-minute items for the reception. And there he was, in the parking lot, leaning against his car, kissing a woman who was definitely not Monica. I'd frozen, groceries in hand, watching from behind a row of shopping carts. The woman was younger, blonde, laughing at something he said. His hand was on her waist. It wasn't a friendly kiss. It was the kind of kiss that told a story. I didn't say anything then. I didn't know Monica well enough to care. She was just my future sister-in-law, someone I was trying to win over. It wasn't my business. But now it was different. Now she'd humiliated me in front of 100 people. She'd tried to make me feel like I wasn't worthy of her brother's love. She'd planted a seed of doubt that I'd have to spend years digging out. So yes, it was different now. After dinner, I helped Carol wash dishes in the kitchen. Monica came in, leaning against the counter, scrolling through her phone. Monica, Carol said gently, could you dry these plates? In a minute, Mom. She didn't look up. I kept scrubbing, my hands moving methodically. I thought about the woman in the parking lot, the way Richard had touched her, the way Monica had no idea. And I thought about the cameras I'd seen in that grocery store parking lot. The security footage that probably still existed somewhere. The proof. It would be so easy. Isabella, Monica said suddenly, her voice pulling me from my thoughts. I hope you're not upset about what I said at the wedding. It was just a joke. You know that, right? I turned off the water, dried my hands slowly on a dish towel, looked at her. Of course, I said. Just a joke. She smiled, relieved. Good. I'd hate for things to be weird between us. They won't be, I said. And I meant it. Because in a few days, things were going to be very, very clear. That night, lying in bed next to David, I made my decision. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell anyone. Some things you have to do alone, in the quiet, when no one is watching. I got out of bed carefully, went to the small desk in our living room, and wrote down everything I remembered. The date, the time, the grocery store, the parking lot, Richard's car, the blonde woman. Then I picked up the phone book and started looking for the number I needed. Sometimes justice doesn't come from confrontation. It comes from truth. The next morning, I called the grocery store. A manager answered, his voice tired and distracted. I told him I'd witnessed a minor fender bender in their parking lot 3 days prior and wanted to know if they kept security footage. We keep it for 30 days, he said, but we can't release it without a police report or what if someone just wanted to see it, to confirm something they saw? He paused. Ma'am, I'm not supposed to. I understand, I said quickly. Thank you for your time. I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from clarity. I didn't need the footage. I just needed to know it existed. Because if Richard was careless enough to kiss another woman in a public parking lot in broad daylight, he was careless in other ways too. And careless men leave trails. I spent the next few days watching, listening, paying attention to things I'd ignored before. At Sunday dinners, Monica would talk about Richard constantly. How busy he was with work, how he was saving up for something special, how he'd promised to take her to the coast for her birthday. She spoke about him the way I used to speak about David, with that breathless certainty that comes from believing you've found your person. But I noticed something else too. She was trying to convince herself. Richard's just stressed lately, she'd say, unprompted. He's been working late a lot. But that's normal, right? Men get focused on their careers. Carol would nod sympathetically. David would change the subject. And I would sit there, quiet, watching Monica's face. The way her smile was just a little too bright. The way she checked her watch when she thought no one was looking. The way she'd excuse herself to call him, then come back with red eyes and claim it was allergies. She knew. Somewhere deep down, she knew something was wrong. But she was doing what so many women do. She was making excuses, building a story that let her keep pretending. I understood that impulse. I'd done the same thing with her. Made excuses. Told myself she didn't mean to be cruel. Told myself it would get better. But pretending doesn't change the truth. It just delays the pain. One afternoon, about a week after the wedding, I was at the library returning some books. Mrs. Patterson, the head librarian who'd known me since I was a girl, pulled me aside. Isabella, she said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. I heard about what happened at your wedding. Monica's comment. My face went hot. Word travels fast. In this town, always. She squeezed my hand. I just wanted you to know. That girl has always had a mean streak, even when she was young. Some people are like that. They can't stand to see others happy. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. But, Mrs. Patterson continued, her eyes sharp behind her glasses, I also know you're not the type to just let something like that go. You're quiet, but you're not weak. Never have been. She patted my hand and walked away, leaving me standing there among the books, my heart pounding. She was right. I wasn't going to let it go. That evening, I did something I'm not proud of, but I won't lie about it now. I went to the law firm where Monica worked. I didn't go inside. I just parked across the street and waited. At 5:30, employees started trickling out. At 6, Monica emerged, talking on her phone, her purse slung over her shoulder. She looked tired, frustrated. She hung up, stood there for a moment staring at nothing, then walked to her car. She sat in the driver's seat for a long time before starting the engine. Even from across the street, I could see her shoulders shaking. She was crying. Part of me, The part that still wanted to be good, to be kind, to be the bigger person, felt sorry for her. But the other part, the part that remembered standing in my wedding dress while people laughed, felt nothing. I followed her. I'm not sure why. Maybe I wanted to understand her. Maybe I wanted to see if my suspicions were right. Maybe I just wanted to know that I wasn't crazy for feeling the way I did. She drove to Richard's apartment building. I parked down the street and watched as she went inside. 20 minutes later, she came back out, walking fast, her face red and blotchy. Richard followed her, trying to grab her arm. She yanked it away. They argued in the parking lot, their voices rising but not loud enough for me to hear the words. Finally, she got in her car and drove off. Richard stood there, hands in his pockets, then turned and went back inside. 10 minutes later, a car pulled up, a silver sedan. The blonde woman from the grocery store got out, looked around nervously, and hurried into the building. There it was, the proof I didn't even know I was looking for. I sat in my car in the growing darkness, my hands gripping the steering wheel. I thought about Monica, about the way she'd humiliated me, about the way she was being humiliated now and didn't even fully know it yet. I thought about justice, about karma, about whether I had the right to intervene in someone else's pain. And then I thought about David's face at our wedding, the way he'd looked at me after Monica spoke, the way he'd apologized for something that wasn't his fault, the way my joy had been stolen and no one had given it back. As I tell you this, I wonder, what would you have done? Would you have walked away? Would you have told her? Or would you have done what I did next? I went home. I wrote down everything I'd seen. And then I made a phone call to someone I knew who worked as a private investigator, an older man named Frank who sometimes came into the library. I didn't ask him to follow Richard. I just asked him a hypothetical question. If someone wanted to prove infidelity, I said, what kind of evidence would they need? He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, photographs, dates, times, witnesses. But Isabella, this isn't about your husband, is it? No, I said, it's not. Then be careful. Revenge has a way of changing people. It's not revenge, I told him. It's truth. But even as I said it, I wondered if there was a difference. That night I couldn't sleep again. David was beside me, breathing softly, trusting me completely. He had no idea what I was planning, and I wasn't going to tell him, because some battles you have to fight alone. The next morning, I made my final decision. Monica wanted to break me. Instead, I was going to set her free, even if she'd never thank me for it. I hired Frank, not officially, just asked him as a favor to spend one afternoon watching Richard's apartment. Just photographs, I said. Nothing invasive, just the truth. He looked at me for a long time. You sure about this? I'm sure. 3 days later, he handed me a manila envelope. Inside were 6 photographs. Richard and the blonde woman entering his apartment building together. Richard and the blonde woman at a restaurant, holding hands across the table. Richard kissing her in his car. All time-stamped, all dated, all undeniable. There's more if you need it, Frank said quietly. He's not even trying to hide it. I stared at the photographs. My hands were steady, but my heart was racing. This was it. The moment I'd been moving toward since my wedding night. The moment where I could either walk away or step forward. How much do I owe you? I asked. Nothing, Frank said. But Isabella, whatever you're planning to do with these, make sure you can live with it after. I nodded. I can. I went home and sat at the kitchen table, the envelope in front of me. David was at work. The apartment was silent except for the ticking of the clock on the wall. I thought about Monica, about the way she'd smiled when she destroyed me, about the way she'd laughed it off as a joke, about the way she'd never apologized, never acknowledged what she'd done. I thought about Richard, about the way he was lying to her every single day, about the way she was defending him, making excuses for him, building a future in her mind that would never exist. And I thought about myself, about the girl I used to be, the one who believed kindness could fix anything, the one who stayed quiet to keep the peace, the one who let people hurt her because she was afraid of being difficult. I wasn't that girl anymore. I took out a piece of plain stationery, no name, no return address, just a simple note, handwritten in block letters so she wouldn't recognize my handwriting. You deserve to know the truth. I slipped the photographs inside, sealed the envelope, wrote Monica's name and address on the front. Then I sat there, staring at it, asking myself one final question. Was this justice or cruelty? I still don't know the answer. Maybe it was both. Maybe that's what truth always is. Necessary and painful at the same time. The next morning, I drove to the post office in the next town over. I didn't want anyone local to see me. I mailed the envelope, watched it disappear into the blue mailbox, and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Relief. I drove home slowly, the windows down, letting the spring air wash over me. I thought about what would happen next. Monica would receive the envelope. She would open it. She would see the photographs, and her world would shatter the way mine had. But here's the thing I've learned about pain. Sometimes you have to break open before you can heal. Sometimes the kindest thing someone can do is show you the truth, even when it destroys you. I got home and made lunch. David came home for his break, kissed me on the forehead, and asked how my day was. Quiet, I said. Just running errands. He smiled and went back to work. He never knew. I never told him. Some secrets you carry alone. 2 days passed, then 3. I went about my life as normal. Worked at the library, made dinner, went to bed. But inside, I was waiting, counting down. On the 4th day, the phone rang. It was Carol, David's mother. Her voice was shaking. Isabella, have you heard from Monica? My heart stopped. No. Why? What's wrong? She's not doing well. She broke up with Richard. She won't talk to anyone. She locked herself in her apartment. I'm worried about her. I closed my eyes. I'm sorry to hear that. Did she say anything to you? Did something happen? No, I said, my voice calm. I haven't spoken to her. Carol sighed. She's been through breakups before, but this one, she seems different, devastated. I don't know what happened. Maybe she just finally saw who he really was, I said softly. There was a long pause. Then Carol said, yes, maybe. We hung up. I stood in my kitchen, the phone still in my hand, and felt the weight of what I'd done settle over me like a blanket. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt tired. That Sunday, we went to Carol's for dinner. Monica didn't come. Carol said she was sick. David looked worried. I stayed quiet, helping in the kitchen, drying dishes, being the good daughter-in-law. On Monday, I saw Monica for the first time since I'd mailed the envelope. I was at the grocery store, picking up milk and bread, when I turned the corner, and there she was, standing in the cereal aisle, staring at the boxes like she didn't know where she was. Her hair was unwashed. Her eyes were red and hollow. She'd lost weight. She looked like a ghost. Our eyes met. For a moment, neither of us moved. I waited for her to say something, to accuse me, to scream, but she didn't. She just looked at me with this broken, empty expression, and then turned and walked away. I stood there, my cart forgotten, my heart pounding, and for the first time since my wedding, I felt something crack inside me. Not guilt, not exactly, but something close. I'd wanted her to hurt the way I hurt, and she did. I'd wanted her to understand what it felt like to be humiliated, and she did. But standing there, watching her walk away like a shell of the person she used to be, I realized something important. Pain doesn't erase pain. It just multiplies it. That night, I told David everything. Not about the photographs, not about the envelope, but about how I felt, about the wedding, about Monica's words, about how they'd been eating at me ever since. He held me while I cried. I'm sorry, he said. I should have protected you better. I should have said something sooner. It's not your fault, I told him. Then whose fault is it? He asked. I didn't answer, because the truth was complicated. Monica was cruel, but Richard was a liar, and I was the one who'd chosen to light the match. We all played our parts. Still, as I lay in bed that night, I thought about the envelope, about truth and consequences, about whether I'd done the right thing. I still wonder if I did the right thing. What about you? What would you have done in my place? And I realized, sometimes there is no right thing. Sometimes there's just the thing you can live with. And I could live with this. 2 weeks passed. Monica didn't come to Sunday dinners. Carol would call her every day, but Monica barely spoke. Just said she was fine, needed time, wanted to be alone. Carol worried, David worried, and I carried my secret like a stone in my chest. Then, one Thursday afternoon, there was a knock on our apartment door. I was folding laundry in the bedroom. David was at work. I walked to the door and looked through the peephole. It was Monica. My breath caught. For a moment, I considered not opening it, pretending I wasn't home. But I knew somehow that this moment had been coming since the day I mailed that envelope. I opened the door. She stood there, thinner than I'd ever seen her, dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She was holding something in her hand. The envelope. My envelope. "Can I come in?" Her voice was flat, empty. I stepped aside. She walked past me into the living room, looked around at our small, tidy apartment, the books on the shelves, the plants by the window, the framed photo of David and me on our wedding day, and then turned to face me. She held up the envelope. "This came to my house. No return address. Just my name." I said nothing. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Inside were photographs," she continued, her voice steady but cold. "Photographs of Richard, with another woman. Multiple photographs, time-stamped, professional quality." Still, I stayed silent. At first I thought it was some kind of sick joke, but then I confronted him, and he admitted it. Everything. He'd been seeing her for 6 months. He was planning to break up with me after my birthday because he didn't want to ruin it. She laughed, but it was a horrible sound. "Isn't that kind of him? He didn't want to ruin my birthday." "Monica, don't," she said sharply. "Don't say my name like we're friends." I closed my mouth. She stepped closer. "I've been trying to figure out who sent this. Who would go through the trouble of hiring someone to follow my boyfriend? Who would care enough to destroy my relationship but not sign their name?" My hands were shaking. I clasped them together. "And then I realized," she said quietly, "there's only one person who would have a reason to hurt me like this." We stared at each other. The air between us felt electric, dangerous. "Did you send this?" she asked. I could have lied. I could have said no, acted shocked, pretended innocence. But I was tired of pretending, tired of being small and quiet and good. "Yes," I said. The word hung between us like smoke. Monica's face didn't change. She just nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something she already knew. "Why?" "You humiliated me," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "At my wedding, in front of everyone I love. You called it a joke, but it wasn't. You wanted to hurt me. You wanted everyone to see me as less than, as someone who didn't deserve David. So you destroyed my relationship?" Her voice rose. "You had someone follow Richard? You invaded my privacy? You sent me photographs that—" Her voice cracked. "Do you have any idea what you've done to me?" "Yes," I said. "I do." "I loved him," she shouted. "I was going to marry him." "He was cheating on you," I shouted back. "For months. You loved someone who was lying to you every single day. I didn't destroy your relationship, Monica. He did. But you made sure I found out." Tears were streaming down her face now. "You could have stayed out of it. You could have let me be happy." "You weren't happy," I said quietly. "You were pretending, just like you pretend everything is fine when you say cruel things, just like you pretend you didn't hurt me." She wiped her face roughly. "So this is revenge? This is you getting back at me?" "This is truth," I said. "Something you don't seem to understand." She stared at me. Then she threw the envelope on our coffee table. The photographs spilled out. Richard's face. The blonde woman. Evidence of betrayal. "You're not a good person," Monica said, her voice cold and final. "You act like you are. You act like you're kind and quiet and sweet. But you're not. You're vindictive. You're cruel. You're exactly the kind of person who would ruin someone's life and call it truth." Her words hit me like a slap, because part of me wondered if she was right. "Maybe," I said, "but at least I'm honest about who I am. Can you say the same?" She picked up her purse, walked to the door, then stopped and turned back. "You know what David saw in you?" she asked. "He saw someone who needed saving, someone small and quiet who would make him feel big and important. That's what I meant when I said he married you out of pity, because that's exactly what he did." The words were designed to break me, and for a second, they almost did. But then I thought about David, about the way he looked at me, the way he held my hand, the way he'd proposed on that snowy bench, the way he'd said, "I want to spend my whole life making you happy." That wasn't pity. That was love. "Get out," I said quietly. She smiled, that same sharp smile from my wedding, and left. The door closed. I stood there in the silence, surrounded by the wreckage of what I'd done, and felt something inside me finally break. I sank onto the couch, picked up one of the photographs, looked at Richard's face, and I cried. Not because I regretted sending the envelope, but because Monica was right about one thing. I wasn't the person I used to be. The girl who believed kindness could fix everything was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone who understood that sometimes the only way to survive is to fight back. I'd lost something that day. Not my marriage, not David, but my innocence. My belief that goodness always wins. My hope that people who hurt you will eventually see the error of their ways. Monica would never thank me for showing her the truth. She would never admit that I'd saved her from marrying a liar. She would only ever see me as the villain who destroyed her happiness. And maybe I was. When David came home that evening, I told him everything. The photographs, the envelope, the confrontation, all of it. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Did you do it because of what she said at the wedding?" "Yes," I admitted. "Was it worth it?" I thought about that question. About Monica's devastated face, about the photographs, about the truth that had finally come to light. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Ask me in 20 years. He pulled me close. "She's going to hate you forever." "I know. My mother might too." "I know. Are you okay with that?" I thought about my wedding day, about standing in that white dress while people laughed, about the way Monica had looked at me with satisfaction, about the years I'd spent trying to make her like me. "Yes," I said. "I am." That night, Carol called. She'd heard about the confrontation from Monica. She was crying. "How could you do this to her?" "She's family, Isabella. Family." "So am I," I said quietly. "Or I'm supposed to be." She hung up without saying goodbye. And just like that, I understood the cost of truth. It wasn't free. It came with loss. Relationships broken. Bridges burned. Peace destroyed. But standing in the ruins of what I'd done, I realized something important. I'd rather live with the consequences of honesty than the weight of silence. Even if it meant losing something I could never get back. Years passed. 28 of them, to be exact. Time has a way of revealing who people really are. Not in the moment, not in the heat of anger or pain, but slowly, quietly, over decades of choices and consequences. Monica never spoke to me again after that day in my apartment. She didn't come to Sunday dinners. She didn't come to Christmas. When Carol had her 70th birthday party, Monica arrived late and left early, making sure we never had to be in the same room. David tried to bridge the gap at first. He'd call her, invite her to things, apologize for things that weren't his fault. But Monica built a wall so high, even he couldn't climb it. Eventually, he stopped trying. "She'll come around when she's ready," he'd say. But we both knew she never would. Carol stayed in contact with both of us, but it was strained. She loved her daughter. She loved me. And she was caught in the middle of a war she didn't start and couldn't end. Over time, she grew tired of playing referee. The family fractured. That's what happens when truth gets told. Sometimes things break that can't be fixed. But here's what else happened. David and I built a life. A real one. We had 2 children. A son named Thomas and a daughter named Grace. We bought a small house with a garden. David learned to make pancakes on Sunday mornings. I taught our kids to love books the way I did. We had hard years and easy years, fights and reconciliations, moments of doubt and moments of absolute certainty. But we had love, real, steady, unglamorous love. I never regretted sending that envelope. Not once. Because as the years went by, I realized I hadn't just exposed Richard's lies. I'd saved Monica from a lifetime of them. She just never saw it that way. I heard about her life in pieces, through Carol. She dated other men after Richard, but none of them lasted. She threw herself into work, climbed the corporate ladder, became a partner at the law firm. She bought a condo downtown, traveled to Europe twice a year, posted photos on social media of fancy dinners and expensive shoes. From the outside, she looked successful, independent, untouchable. But Carol would call me sometimes, late at night, and say, "I worry about Monica. She seems so alone." "Has she ever tried to reconcile?" I'd ask. "No, she says she doesn't need anyone." And that was Monica's choice, not mine. She could have forgiven me. She could have forgiven David. She could have shown up to family gatherings and been civil. But she chose pride over peace. She chose resentment over repair. And those choices, over time, hardened her into something brittle. I'm not saying this with satisfaction. I'm saying it because it's true. Life always keeps its score, not because of karma or divine justice or cosmic balance, but because the way we treat people, the walls we build, the bridges we burn, eventually shapes who we become. 10 years after the envelope, Carol passed away. Cancer. Quick and cruel. At the funeral, Monica and I stood on opposite sides of the church. She didn't look at me. I didn't look at her. But as we stood at the graveside, both of us crying for the woman who'd loved us both, I felt something shift. Grief has a way of making old grudges feel small. I wanted to reach out to her, to say something, to acknowledge that we'd both lost someone irreplaceable. But David put his hand on my shoulder and shook his head. "Not today," he whispered. "Give her space." So I did. Monica sold Carol's house within a month, divided the belongings, sent David his half without a word, and then disappeared back into her own life. Another 10 years passed. Our children grew up. Thomas became a teacher. Grace became a nurse. David retired from his job and started woodworking in the garage, making beautiful things with his hands. I kept working at the library until I was 65, then finally let go and spent my days reading in the garden, baking bread, watching the seasons change. We grew old together, slowly, peacefully, with gratitude. I thought about Monica sometimes, wondered if she was happy, wondered if she'd ever found peace, but I never reached out. Some doors, once closed, are meant to stay that way. Then, 2 months ago, David got a phone call. It was from a nurse at a care facility across town. Monica had listed him as her emergency contact. She'd had a stroke, a bad one. She was alive, but struggling. Could he come? We drove there together, my hand in his, neither of us speaking. The facility was clean, but sad in that way all those places are. Fluorescent lights, beige walls, the smell of disinfectant trying to cover something worse. Monica was in a room at the end of a long hallway. We stood in the doorway for a moment, just looking. She was in a wheelchair by the window, staring out at nothing. Her hair was gray. Her face was thin. Her hands shook slightly in her lap. She looked old, and so alone. David walked in first. "Monica," he said gently. She turned her head slowly, looked at him, then at me. For a moment, I thought she might scream or throw something or demand we leave, but she didn't. She just stared at me with this empty, hollow expression, the same expression I'd seen in the grocery store 28 years ago, but deeper now, permanent. "Hello," I said quietly. She didn't respond, just kept staring. The nurse came in, smiling too brightly. "She doesn't talk much since the stroke, but she can hear you. The doctors say engagement helps with recovery." David pulled up a chair, started talking to her about small things, the weather, Thomas's new baby, Grace's promotion. Monica listened, or seemed to, but her eyes stayed empty. I stood by the door, watching, and I felt something I didn't expect. Sadness, not for myself, for her. Because here was the truth that 28 years had revealed. Monica had won the battle but lost the war. She'd held on to her anger so tightly that it had consumed everything else. Her relationship with her brother, her chance at family, her ability to let people in. She'd built a fortress around herself, and now she was trapped inside it, alone. After half an hour, David stood up, kissed her forehead. "I'll come back next week," he promised. She didn't react. As we walked to the car, David was quiet. Finally, he said, "She called you crazy once, at the wedding. Said you were overreacting." I remember, looking at her now. He shook his head. "Life really does keep its score, doesn't it?" I thought about that, about Monica's empty eyes, about the lonely room, about the decades of choices that had led her there. Yes, I said. It does. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel vindicated. I just felt sad. Because this wasn't the ending I'd imagined all those years ago when I sent that envelope. I'd wanted Monica to see the truth and grow from it, to become someone better, to find her own happiness. Instead, she'd become someone smaller, and that wasn't my fault, but it wasn't entirely hers either. It was just what happens when pain turns into bitterness, and bitterness turns into a way of life. We got in the car. David started the engine. And as we drove away from that sad, beige building, I thought about all the choices that had led us here. Mine, Monica's, Richard's, all of us making decisions in moments of pain that echoed for decades. Some people say forgiveness is for yourself, not for the other person. Maybe that's true. Maybe Monica's inability to forgive, me, Richard, life itself, is what trapped her in that room. Or maybe we all just end up where our choices take us. And sometimes, that place is very, very lonely. I still wonder if I did the right thing. What about you? What would you have done in my place? That night, lying in bed next to David, I felt him reach for my hand in the dark. Do you ever regret it? He asked. The envelope? I thought about Monica's empty eyes, about the 28 years that had passed, about the life I'd built and the life she'd lost. No, I said, because the truth is always better than a lie. Even when it hurts. He squeezed my hand. I love you, Isabella. I love you too. And in the darkness, I realized something. I'd lost Monica's approval 28 years ago, but I'd kept my dignity. I'd built a family. I'd chosen love over bitterness, truth over pretending, peace over revenge. Monica had chosen differently, and now we both had to live with those choices. That's what karma really is. Not punishment from the universe, just the natural consequence of who we decide to be. I'm 56 years old now. My hair is more gray than brown. My hands have wrinkles that weren't there before. I look in the mirror and see my mother's face looking back at me. Time does that, turns you into your own history. It's been 3 months since we visited Monica at the care facility. David goes every week. Sometimes she acknowledges him, sometimes she doesn't. I went back once. 2 weeks ago, brought her flowers from my garden. She looked at them, but didn't smile. I told her about our grandchildren. She stared out the window. Before I left, I did something I didn't plan to do. I reached into my purse and pulled out something I'd been carrying for years. An old photograph. Not one of the pictures from the envelope. A different one. From before everything broke. It was taken at a family barbecue, maybe 6 months before my wedding. Monica and I are standing by the grill, both of us holding plates. She's laughing at something David said off camera. I'm smiling, trying to fit in. We look young, hopeful, like we might actually become sisters someday. I set it on her bedside table. This is who we were, I said quietly. Before everything. She didn't look at it. But I left it there anyway, because even if she never forgives me, even if she never understands, I wanted her to remember that there was a moment when things could have been different. That's the thing about time. It gives you perspective, distance, the ability to see your own story from the outside. 28 years ago, I sent that envelope in anger, in pain, in a desperate need to balance the scales, and I told myself it was about truth, about justice, about saving Monica from a liar. All of that was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth is, I wanted her to hurt the way she hurt me. I wanted her to feel small and humiliated and betrayed. I wanted her to know what it was like to have your joy stolen in front of everyone you love. And she did. She felt all of it, and more. Does that make me a good person or a bad person? I still don't know. Maybe it makes me human. Maybe that's all any of us are. People trying to survive our pain in whatever ways we know how. But here's what I've learned in the years since. Revenge might feel like justice in the moment, but it doesn't heal you. It doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't give you back what you lost. Only time does that. Time and choice. The choice to build something better than what broke you. The choice to let love be louder than hurt. The choice to become someone who carries wisdom instead of bitterness. I look at my life now, and I see what I chose. I chose David. I chose our children. I chose Sunday morning pancakes and bedtime stories and arguments over whose turn it was to do the dishes. I chose ordinary, imperfect, beautiful love. Monica chose differently. She chose walls. She chose loneliness. She chose to let one betrayal define her entire life. I wish I could say I saved her. I wish I could say the envelope set her free, and she went on to find happiness. But life doesn't work that way. You can show someone the truth, but you can't make them heal from it. That part is up to them. Still, I think about that envelope sometimes, about the moment I sealed it, about the choice I made. And I wonder, if I could go back, knowing everything I know now, would I do it again? The answer is complicated. I wouldn't do it for revenge. I wouldn't do it out of anger. But I might still do it, because Richard was lying to her, and she deserved to know. The difference is, I'd do it with more compassion. I'd sign my name. I'd sit with her while she looked at the photographs. I'd hold her hand while her world fell apart. I'd help her pick up the pieces. But I was 28 years old and newly wounded. I didn't have that kind of grace yet. I only had pain that wanted company. I'm gentler with that younger version of myself now. She was doing the best she could with what she knew. We all are. Last week, I went through old boxes in our attic. I found my wedding album, flipped through the pages. There I was in my white dress, young and hopeful. There was David, looking at me like I hung the moon. There were our families, gathered and smiling. And there, in one photo standing at the edge of the crowd, was Monica. She's not looking at the camera. She's looking at me. And her expression is complicated. Jealousy, maybe. Or loneliness. Or fear. I stared at that photo for a long time. And I realized something I'd never seen before. Monica wasn't just cruel that night at the reception. She was drowning. And she pulled me under because she needed someone else to feel as lost as she did. That doesn't excuse what she did. But it helps me understand it. Understanding isn't the same as forgiveness. But it's close. It's the beginning of letting go. I put the album back in the box, went downstairs, made tea, sat in my garden and watched the birds. This is my life now. Quiet. Full. Mine. If my story helps one woman open her eyes to a toxic relationship, to a painful truth, to the realization that she deserves better, then it was worth telling. If it helps one woman understand that standing up for yourself doesn't make you cruel, it makes you strong, then every hard moment was worth it. Because here's what I know now that I didn't know at 28. You teach people how to treat you. And sometimes, the only way to teach that lesson is through boundaries, through consequences, through truth that hurts but heals. Monica taught me that silence has a cost, and I taught her that cruelty does too. We both paid our debts. We both learned our lessons. We both became who our choices made us. I'm at peace with that now. Thank you for staying with me until the end. This story has lived inside me for so long, and telling it, really telling it, with all its complicated truths, has felt like setting down a weight I've been carrying for decades. If this story touched your heart, I hope you'll subscribe and turn on the bell to hear more stories of women who turned pain into wisdom. Every day, one woman, one life lesson, one truth told. Share this story with someone you love. Sometimes one story can change an entire day. Sometimes it can change a life. I don't know if Monica will ever see this. Part of me hopes she doesn't. Part of me hopes she does. Either way, I've told the truth. And the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than silence. God bless you. Thank you for listening. And remember, you are stronger than the worst thing anyone ever said about you. You are worthier than the worst way anyone ever treated you. And you deserve a life built on truth, even when the truth is hard. See you next time.